this session has been titled Everyone Loves Crime. I wonder if that sentence is really valid when we think of a non-fiction, a creative non-fiction that Shevlin Sebastian has written, which is about a true crime, which wherein that accused, the suspected, is wrongly accused, and he undergoes punishment, a lot of trauma. He loses his lifestyle as it was. It never came back. And then, through his own methods, he proves that he was not the person who committed the crime. So this was just one of those stories we read in the newspapers and we forget. But Shevlin has caught the whole story between the covers of a book and has presented the story of a true crime in creative nonfiction. Like these days you see movie options for any crime that happens, especially fantastic, crimes that catch your attention like a movie does. But here it's in a book. You can go back and read it anytime to see what actually went wrong. Anupama's book is fiction. It's fiction. Anupama's book is actually crime fiction, but what she has chosen is different from the usual, say, Agatha Christie's or Perry Mason's. She has chosen a place and a theme which connects her to literature and language. But the crime is a crime. It is about the beheading of a prominent man and a local person, a woman who's suspected, but she's nowhere to be found. So that's the story. So I think I'll start with Shevlin on his journey in writing this book, and then come on to Anupama about how she went about to write her book. So Shevlin, tell us how you found the story. And tell us about the story. You should also talk about Tajudin, who went through all this.
Yeah, so basically, I had an agent in Delhi. His name is Anish Chandi, and he took me on as a client. And it was he who spotted this story, and he told me that this is a tremendous idea for a book. So I honestly never used to cover crime. I'm a sort of a feature writer. So I read the story and I found it very interesting about, it's called the doppelganger case of false identity. That means somebody who is, because he looks like the thief, is arrested and taken to prison. So that was a rare case. I mean, not many people have experienced it. So I decided, I was a bit apprehensive whether I had enough material for a book. Nevertheless, I had a stroke of luck because COVID had just come in. Tajudin was based in Kannur, and I'm in Kochi, so more than 200 kilometers away. But as COVID got in, Tajudin got a job in Kochi. So I had a big stroke of luck. So I was able to interact with him face to face. I had some problem is that I'm a Malayali who grew up outside, and Tajudin is from Kannur. So of course my Malayalam has improved a lot, but it was very vital with my background to have a face-to-face interview with Tajudin. So that was what happened. I started interviewing him. I'm a journalist for many years, so I know if today we are going to talk about some a point, I would prepare a lot of questions on it. Then I would go meet him, and I would record it, then put it into my laptop, transcribe it, and that's how I went ahead with the writing of the book. What I found a bit amusing is Tajudin was living in one sort of a hostel type building for professionals. And he had the very unusual habit that every time I used to go to meet him, He would make me milk with Horlicks. And he would say, you have this will give you a lot of energy. So that's how it began, the story. As for Tajudin, the person, Tajudin had never seen the inside of a police station before he ended up spending 54 days. So you can imagine what a shock that is. He's a middle class person who's just flown from Doha to Kannur for the wedding of his daughter. They are at the peak of happiness. They went for dinner to their sister's place and they come back at midnight, and the 8 policemen are standing outside. And then they tell him that you are a thief. He's saying, I can't understand. He was so shocked. But when they showed the CCTV image, involuntarily Tajudin said, oh, this looks like me. And there was another problem. When they showed, when the wife also saw it, he said, oh, looks like a younger Tajudin. They never knew it was a grave situation, that the CCTV image was about a thief. They didn't know the background. So the police were convinced that Tajudin was. That night, within an hour, he was taken to the police station. So you can imagine that it's a 360 degree. Now, from the height of happiness, he went to the depths of despair. So this is what the essence of the story is.
Anupama, your story is about a murder and a suspect, and a woman who's a suspect. So, how come you made the story different from a typical whodunit thing?
When I began writing the story, I never thought of it as a whodunit. In fact, the whodunit is a red herring. The novel has been marketed as a whodunit, but it doesn't fit the genre at all. To me, it was a philosophical meditation on the question of violence, really. So I wrote it like that. What I was trying to do was fill it with a lot of misdirection. And the misdirection came not because I was trying to do an investigative thriller, but because I was trying to understand the depth of human motivation. So I saw the novel in the line of something like Crime and Punishment by Dostoevsky. So if that is a whodunit, then this is also a whodunit. Because we know whodunit. What we don't know is how, why, wherefore, and so on, So the goal was to look at crime not as an isolated incident that shocks us, even spectacular crime, but to try and see if it is networked into social relations, firstly, if it can be understood through psychology, either of the criminal or of, what makes a person into a criminal. So it was trying to look at the network of relations that underlies crime as we define it in social terms. And then maybe using that as a template to try and understand what punishment means and why we feel that for a crime this heinous, punishment of this much is not good enough, right? So we have this tendency to respond to crime as 5 years is not good enough, right? Or 10 years is not good enough. Capital punishment is not good enough, right? So what allows us to measure crime, and therefore what allows us to apportion punishment. So none of us sitting here, I hope, is a judge or a jury member, but I think we judge and sit as jury in our heads when we read about crime too. So, it was about these kinds of questions.
But one thing that struck me about these two books is that both are placed in small towns. Normally we have, you do choose smaller towns or villages for the place of crime, but this was specifically small town. Can you comment on that?
Oh, that's a pure accident, because my agent had seen a news report about it. So he just felt, and let's face the fact that most English writing is very urban oriented. Most of the writing is urban oriented, so this is very good that we went into the rural, like a small town, as you said, and a story came so that people and the readers are all urban, and they know very little about only because of R.K. Narayan we know that small town so well. No? Thanks to him that he focused on it. So it's a pure accident that it happened.
I'm also thinking about how you developed that story placed in the small town. See, it's quite difficult, like to talk about small towns unless you really develop the background. You have to draw the picture, but you have done it quite well.
Thank you, thank you. That
So
is
that is what I want to know. Since have you worked in Kannur?
no. I went to Kannur to do a story on the RSS CPM, the
Conflict.
rivalry,
Mm.
and I ended up in that same school, where Jayakrishnan Master
Was murdered.
Yeah, so this is very interesting that thank God I went, because I am not a crime or a political or a social writer. I only write feature stories, and I'm a soft feature. I write on arts and culture and books and all that. But fate made me go because it was a Sunday magazine cover story. I went there and I landed up in this particular class where this guy was hacked to death. And then what happened, I just casually said, "Hey, Tajudin, you're from Kannur. Oh, do you know anything about this CPIM RSS fight?" He said, "No, I am totally neutral. They are doing the fight here. I'm living my life over here." But in the course of the one conversation, he accidentally told me that I was friends with Jay Krishna Master. To be honest, that was the only time in my numerous sessions with him, my hair actually stood in my, my arms, because I got extremely excited about it. I said, "Oh my God." And I have one chapter is about that. His friendship with Jay Krishna Master 1 month before he was hacked to death, because he was working for Escotel Mobile Company, and the BJP party wanted him to get a mobile so that he can call for help whenever if he is in danger. So Tajudin had gone to his house, had lunch in the house, interacted with the mother, all that, and they had a discussion about his life being in danger. So all that was extremely exciting for the only reason, but because of fate, few years ago I had gone to that classroom. I mean, it's like a tremendous feeling to be in that classroom, It's so normal. And then to think that this really horrific, gory murder took place. And I just want to add one small story to this. There were about 40 students in that class. All were traumatized because the class was going on when this murder took place. The interesting thing, many of course took a lot of years to recover psychologically. But one girl never recovered. That girl became a recluse, never stepped out of a house. And you're not going to believe this. It's a tragedy. But I think 2 years or 1 year, yesterday somebody told me exactly 1 year ago yesterday, she committed suicide. So, when events take place like this, not everybody recovers. So that is the one sad part about this story.
Anupama, your I can't pronounce it. Yes. Yeah. See, the question is about that. Sitan Vasal. Sitan Vasal is a created place or is it a real place? Real place. Okay. So you have brought in Sitan Vasal very graphically, very neatly. You almost step into it once you start reading. So why did you place your story in a small town? What was your struggle? What is your challenge in developing the background?
I'm in agreement with Shevlin here that, English writing tends to be very urban, metropolitan, and our readers especially are looking for cities and city readers, right? English speaking, English reading publics are often in the city. So part of the reason I wanted to set, my story is set in Sitana Vasal, which is an actual town in Tamil Nadu. The reason I wanted to do that was because Sitana Vasal is known for a complex of Jaina caves. And the novel is also an eco-novel, eco-fiction. One of the central motifs in the novel is the discovery by the woman of this chain of caves, And I'm not sure if you guys know about this phenomenon in nature called a cave within a cave. Inside a cave, you can have a cave, and the largest one on earth is one as big as New York City. It's in Taiwan. And China is full of it. So just imagine a gufa, and inside the gufa is a whole world as big as New York City. And the one in Taiwan, it has trees that are from prehistoric times. So it's a whole world unto itself. And the concept was of this woman discovering herself after some grievous violence. And Sitanavasal helped me imagine that. This cave is called a Doline, D-O-L-I-N-E. But in Sitanavasal, there's no Doline. So that part is entirely fictional, fictitious. But it helped me to imagine a place that was very close to nature. And because it was only a town, it was not fully urban, but it was not village or rural either. And the goal in the novel was never to describe the place as such. So you will not get a Malgudi out of the Sitanavasal in my novel. But you'll get a flavor of the place because of the kind of people that I introduce you to. So, it was a kind of oblique way of rendering the place through its population. And the other reason why I wanted to place it in Sitanavasal is because when you're a debutant writer, and you're writing your novel, I'm not a debutant writer, this is my debut novel. I have a book of poems prior to that. Is that you can't really outdo Arundhati Roy. And if you're a Malayali writer and you are a woman, the bar has been set way too high. So I didn't want to be compared, I didn't want to set it in Kerala. And I wanted to go out into a zone of discomfort. So I am not Tamilian. I do understand Tamil because I worked in Sri Lanka for my field work during my doctorate. So my love of Sangam poetry means that I go a great deal to Tamil writing on my own. Something fell on me. Okay, that's okay.
Blessing.
As long as it's not so that was the second reason. That is, I pushed myself into a zone of discomfort, causing me to look up Sitanavasal. And the final thing is I never went to Sitanavasal. I wrote it entirely from my imagination. Maybe I looked at there is a Wikipedia page. So the goal was not to be naturalistic, but to render a place with the barest strokes possible. So it was a challenge in terms of craft as well,
It's wonderful to see how two stories of crime. When we started, it was plainly and purely about crime, but now we have traveled much further into social aspects, into ecology-related details. Plus, I think your story travels even further. Both the stories travel even further. And this is, to me, both the books are about India and our current social scene. How can you relate to that statement? Can you comment on that statement? Your story is more than crime. Your story is more than the background, the small towns. Your story is a social story. How would you comment on that?
I wrote this story while I was a fellow at the Samyukta Research Center in Trivandrum. It was 3 months of heavy COVID. At that time, we'd just been vaccinated for the first time, but nobody knew of the destiny of the vaccine. No one knew when a booster would be required. My whole family was very worried about coming to Kerala, especially because of its high COVID numbers. So there I was, cocooned for 3-4 months in Trivandrum, in Kaudiyar. And the news that we were hearing was the spike in domestic violence against women all across the world. It was almost as if, sitting at home did not cause women to feel more protected, but actually rendered them more vulnerable to domestic crime and to domestic violence. And there was a really big spike both in gendered violence, sexual assault, but also general physical assault. So, that irony and that, when I was reading the papers, there was suddenly a rash of newspaper articles of men beheading women and carrying their heads in anger to the police station. So if you want, you can just type on Google 2021, 2022, beheading, police station, or some such keywords, and you will find a rash of articles. Admittedly, most of it was coming out of North India and Central India. But there was one isolated case from Tamil Nadu as well. And the reasons varied from, she made a shitty breakfast to I suspected her of sleeping with my neighbor, or my father-in-law hit on her and she reciprocated, something like that. So a whole range from a bad breakfast, poorly made paratha, leading to beheading of the woman and the head being carried by the man, sometimes the blood dripping, sometimes in a polythene cover, and he turns up at the police station and says, I have done it. So it led me to think about the psychology behind that kind of violence. What does it take to reach that level of fury and anger? And often it is a matter of impulse. You just do it, But hacking off a head is not very easy either. It takes more than courage, it takes physical capacity. And beheadings are in our social systems, beheadings are very male crimes. Women have barely, in the history of crime, been found of beheading. So I thought, what would happen if the opposite happened, where a woman commits the crime? But you have to read the novel to find out whether the woman commits the crime. Because both the woman is missing and the head is missing.
So I have a very important social lesson from this book, and that is false cases. False cases all over India. Tajudin was a very lucky man. He spent 54 days in jail. There are cases of people in places like Bombay and Delhi and all who have spent 10, 12 or 14 years in jail, and then they are exonerated because there is no evidence. So you have to imagine this case. This man has been in jail 12 years. He's the main breadwinner, and there is no income in that family. You can imagine what stress that family is going through. Who's going to pay the rent? Who's going to pay the education fees? Who's going to pay the food bills? Also, they are socially ostracized because people believe that this man is a criminal or a terrorist. So I have advocated that we should have what is known as a financial compensation. In USA, when such cases are there, in different states, because there most states are very independent, they give between 25 to 30 to 35 million dollars. So we are the fourth largest economy in the world. We should come up with a system that when somebody is exonerated, see the number of years he's been this thing, and we should pay not in lakhs, which is always the case, but in crores. You have to enable this man to survive for the rest of his life. His career has been destroyed. 14 years away from the workplace, how do you restart your career? So all of you, media, civil society, we should have a movement that innocent people framed and then acquitted should get a very solid compensation. So you can suggest that why don't they just file a case? Problem is, you file a case, the police will put another false case on you, and you will end up going in prison. Everybody is scared, so they can't file a case. And the psychological damage to the children. Tajudin's son, Tezin, 7 years old, when he went to school, they called him Kalandamon. They either Kalandamon. So it is very traumatic. That boy testified against the Child Human Rights Commission telling all this. So we need to understand, we need to sensitize police. Police do not have any refresher courses. They don't have any refresher courses. They work 14 hours a day. They don't have any holidays during all the festivals. They don't spend time with their families. So both sides there are problems. And there is, of course, a tremendous political influence, that interference, that they cannot function properly. So, I mean, it's easy to blame police, but they're also going through a bad time. In fact, the new DGP has said we should fix the work at 8 hours a day. Because, you know, a policeman needs to go and see a movie. He has to go and see an art exhibition. Then only he will get humanized. He is meeting people, criminals, all types of, you know, the dark side of people. So you have to resist it by spending time with your family, relaxing, going for a picnic with the family. They don't get all these things to do. So there are many lessons. These are subtle lessons. When you read, you will understand. So what is a case of Tajudin And Tajudin and his family have not recovered. Tajudin is still going through moments of depression, and it's a very sad story. So I hope you will read and sensitize and spread the word. Thank you.
Thank you, Shevlin, for that. I was about to ask you what's happening to Tajudin now. Okay.
Yeah, Tajudin still has not recovered. Tajudin had a very flourishing business in Doha. It was a car rental business. Now he lost his job, that business. Then he came back, and then it was COVID. So he's gone through a lot of tough times. And if I call him now, Tajudin is an extremely colorful personality. If I call him now, just on the hello itself, I'll know whether he's depressed or he's in a good mood.
Anupama, your book has a further aspect that I want to ask you about. You have used language in a very interesting way. Any person writing in English would use a typical English. It would be either Indian English, as we call it, or try and adhere to, like a more sophisticated or a Western aspect of English. But you have used an aspect of Tamil in English, and that too on purpose. It's not like a fledgling writer unconsciously writing in English with a dialect. I mean, if you can call it a Tamil dialect in English. But you have consciously used the vernacular aspect of Tamil in English, and that too very effectively. What was your intention, and how did you do it?
The novel was always a way for me to try and understand what is the place of English in India today. I teach English day in and day out, and sometimes I can't see it beyond the matrix of dominant and, repressed languages. It's very easy to think of English as it is a dominant tongue, and I don't think English is quite yet a vernacular in India. There's no place that English belongs to, firstly. It's spoken by a very small percentage of the entire population of the country. And when it is spoken, it's often used for communicative purposes, So with all that in the background, we also know that our foreignness to English is what makes us attuned to the beauty of the language as well. That is why some of the greatest writers in English have been non-native speakers of English. You can think of Nabokov or Conrad. All the great masters, in some senses, have been non-native speakers who acquired English. And I acquired Tamil in a similar way, So the novel, in that sense of writing, was an experiment. I was trying to break the back of English without breaking the Tamil. But also, Tamil is very mellifluous, it's a very melodic language. And I was trying to sort of interpenetrate the two, and definitely trying to see whether that interpenetration works. In the poetic passages, for instance, in English, it works very well. But what happens in the prosaic passages where you're describing something? So that was definitely a challenge, and my temperament is that of a poet rather than, say, of a journalist or of a word picturist. So I thought I played to some strengths in trying to mix the two languages together. And eventually I don't know how successful I was in my goals, but I wanted the story to read as if it was originally written in Tamil, and that you were reading an English translation of it. So now you have to read it in order to know whether that has come through or not. And if it has, then that means that English has far more surprises for us than we had originally thought it to have.
See, when I read your book, I read it at one time. Then I thought, okay, this lady is obviously very well versed in writing English and in presenting English. So there must be some reason why you chose to write it in this. It's a slightly different way of writing, but not that it's like anything unpleasant. It is certainly very interesting, very readable. But I was very curious because I am also a language student. So what happened when you actually wrote it? What did your editor say?
So, the book had a very curious genesis. My editor fell into my lap. She had read something that I had published previously, a short story called The Meeting, which was set in Sri Lanka. And it came out in this journal called Himal South Asian. And so she had read it on Himal, and my blurb on Himal said that Anupama is working on a novel. She's the writer in residence at Samyukta. So she got in touch with me and she said, is that novel anywhere in the picture? And this was in January 2022, and I had just finished writing the first draft of the book in December 2021. So I had the luckiest break because the the editor came straight over to me. But when I sent her the draft, the first few chapters, and eventually the full manuscript, the language struck her as well. And luckily, she thought that the experiment was very good and very interesting on how to get these two languages to mix with each other without actually supplying a glossary, as in post-colonial novels, or without leaving important words untranslated, letting the reader do the work. But I do a mix of both. There's no glossary, but for example, the Tamil names of flowers, are left untranslated. Because not only do they lend local color, I also felt that a number of readers will actually go and try and find out what is the meaning of this word. But where, for example, I use some very colorful Tamil abuses, and I think Bhodro or civil Tamil speakers will also be shocked. But for something like that, you have to stretch the English language to expand it and explain the Gali without actually coming across as, heavy-handed, top-down, So those were the challenges, and the editor was very helpful because she was neither a Tamil speaker nor a Malayalam speaker, and she brought a kind of global outlook to it, asking me to refine it here and, sensitize it there. And given that the novel is about extreme violence, I also wanted to be very careful that I was not using language to titillate or to desensitize or to de-emphasize the nature of the crime itself, So the language had to be, from my end, a work of great effort, but for the reader, it should have come across as completely effortless, So I wanted to efface my own personality almost entirely. Nothing of my being a teacher of English, nothing of my being bourgeois subject. I wanted to efface my personality entirely. So that was the challenge with regard to language, to employ it as a native would employ it, and yet to keep it accessible enough so that foreign readers, and by that I don't mean people living abroad, but people that do not speak Tamil should have access to it.
So that was an academic speaking of her writing crime experience. So how did the journalists...
Yeah, once again, I just want to add one thing. Anupama has a flair for languages because I told her that I grew up in Calcutta, and then she immediately told me, Kemonacho. So what shocked me is because Bengali is perfect. She spent 9 years in Calcutta working for Presidency College, and she has picked up a tremendous fluency, better than I spent all my life over there. So you have a natural flair for languages, I must say.
So your language in the book is not a journalist language. How did you migrate? It is actual creative nonfiction, and it doesn't sound like a journalist presenting facts. You've actually gone through the story with a rhythm, and obviously that trauma of the person comes through very well.
Yeah.
And
So
how did you do that?
This is a very interesting question because I'll tell you what happened. When I first started writing the first chapters, and I would send it to my agent, he said that, Shevlin, you're doing journalism. Because as a journalist, you have to write and write fast and come to the end fast. And first, we have a short deadline. Secondly, we don't have much number of words. So you have to race through. So he told me, you can take 5 years, not 5 minutes.
journey slower with.
Yeah. So then what happened? I did a complete re-education. The re-education is how to write a non-fiction book. And I'm very grateful to the Westerners on YouTube. They share their knowledge very easily. They, they always put up these different videos, tutorials, how to do this, how to set a scene, what should be in a scene. You have to use the five senses. So I had a complete re-education of how to be a creative writer. And then I bought books on writing, and I was struggling. It was a very difficult moment for me, even though I'm a short story writer also. But this 3 decades of writing in this one way, fast finish it and file it, it took me quite a bit of strain. And till one day I read one person giving a suggestion that enter the person's body. So this was a revelation for me. So I entered Tajudin's body. So in a particular scene, I would try to enter his body.
You know the Malayalam word for it, I suppose?
No, I don't know.
Paragaya Pravesha.
So I learned that, and once I entered Tajudin's body, and of course I got Tajudin's help. For example, when he was in the prison cell for the first time, I asked him what was the smell. What's the smells in a prison cell? So he told me one was of course the urine, because they have one spot over there. Then he said there's a smell of rust, because apparently the bars were rusting. Then it was raining, so there was a wet smell of the mud. And then the sour smell of the blanket on which he is. So it was an interesting exercise for him also to recall, oh, acha, yeah, I think it was like this. So that's how I wrote the.
I'm a creative writing trainer, so I'm very much reminded of what we speak in class. These are the exercises we give them. So let me ask you about your other avatars. Other than a writer, what all things do you do?
I read a great deal, Part of being a writer is to be very immersed in the world of letters, and, reading, writing and thinking and teaching occupies a great deal of my time. And most of the time I find myself, involved in various kinds of architectural, reimagining kind of things, partly because I have a great interest in space and space organization. So I find now my hobbies are all very cognate, Maybe it is part of being middle-aged and recognizing that time is going by. So I want to devote a great deal of my time writing, and I'm trying for ways to retire early. So let's see how successful I will be.
And you, Shevlin? What all do you do other than writing?
Well, I
know you have a long-running blog.
Yeah,
very active.
I have been a journalist for 3 decades. I continue doing journalism because I have the same excitement which I had 30 years ago of seeing my byline in print. I still feel the excitement. Last Sunday, one article came. I still felt I got that kick, that dopamine release when you see your byline in print. So this, and then I was speaking to the veteran journalist M.G. Radhakrishnan, and he also said that it's always a kick, it's a joy. And my friend Ratish is here. He's a photographer. He's been photographing for years, and all of us enjoy our jobs. It's very important to do work that you love. You have to be passionate about it. So I think till I die, I'll do this.
Hi, this was a very interesting panel, though I had to join only midway. But I was wondering, Anupama, it's more an observation than a question. I wanted your remarks on this. When I read your novel, like at least thrice, and I have 3 copies of the book also, which I've been gifting to people, huge admirer. So while reading the book, I was thinking that there are 2 ways one could approach, the land formation under Sittanavasal. One is that it's an actual, phenomenon, and the other is that it's those labyrinthine, passage or pathways of a woman's mind and the escape that she seeks when she, meets with violence on an almost day-to-day basis. Because as women, we know there's a lot of violence that we encounter, casual, deliberate, kind of thing. And there's a certain space that sometimes women create within themselves into which they escape. And when Mr. Shevlin was talking about the smells, I remember one distinct passage in your book where the person remembers the smell of sambar under the nails of one of the assailants. So I just wanted your take on that. The space and the place.
Yeah, thanks, Sonia, for the question. And you're absolutely right. I think the cave system works allegorically as a kind of Platonic image as well, for sure. Though I was very clear when I was building the cave system as a fictional space, that I would populate it with actual phenomena that occurs in nature. So I was very clear cut that all the description that you see as a reader, encounter as a reader through the main character, actually happens in nature. For example, the reverse waterfall, or the sprouting of the Neelakurunji flowers, and other such details like the murmuration of the starlings and the flight of the mayflies, which gives the novel its title. All of this actually occurs in nature, but it occurs in various different parts of the world. So it may not occur in Tamil Nadu, or it may not occur only in Kerala, or only in, I live in Jodhpur now. So for us, it may seem like, they happen in other parts of the world and we see it on Animal Planet or National Geographic. And so maybe they don't occur at all, So I wanted to use that space actually to blur the confidence in our reality. Urban and metropolitan people have great confidence in the stability of our life. And I think part of it is a civic confidence. You step out, the floor won't cave in. But what happens when you live very close to nature is you can't take for granted many things. You can't be sure that that branch won't come and fall on you because it's not under your control. And I was, so I wanted to shake some of that, reality, unreality thing. But everything in the novel in that sense is fairly naturalistic, But that is the great thing about natural imagery, that it has this great explosive potential of being allegorical as well. You can make it whatever you want it to be. The labyrinthine nature of a woman's mind, or the labyrinthine nature of a human being whose will you do not know, what they will do next.
Hi, Shevlin. I'm also a journalist, but I've never covered crime. So, just out of curiosity, how much effort and time did it take you to get Tajudin really speak out? I mean, not just speak, but he went through a bad time. So, obviously, it's traumatic. So, to get those inside things out, how hard was it?
Yeah, this interaction with Tajudin turned out to be highly interesting because, firstly, he was burning with a lot of anger. And because of that, and he wanted his story to be told. That was the most interesting part. So we were fated to meet. It was destiny which made us meet. And what is even more interesting was, it was exactly like peeling one onion. You take up one skin, suddenly, I'll tell you how, because we were talking about the crime, and then suddenly he said, "Sir, I remember this." And then he'll say that one day in the jail, one inmate was reading the newspaper and said, "Vellorum Bombay poitundo." Then immediately Tajudin said, "Njan Bombay poitundu." So there's one entire chapter on his Bombay experiences. So he would remember things as he was remembering the original crime. He said, "Sir, എനിക്കൊരു ലവ് സ്റ്റോറി ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നു, എൻ്റെ കല്യാണം ഒരു ലവ് സ്റ്റോറിയാണ്." So we were able to, so I was able to get a complete picture, because this process of recalling events will trigger off other memories. So like that, I was able to get, Tajudin wasn't planning to tell about Jayakrishnan Master and all that. No? So by accident, we went off into many tangents, and I think it made it a deeper story, a more complete story. And it is also psychologically relieving if somebody is there to listen to him. So for him, it was meant, the agony was receded when he was speaking to me. Yeah, somebody was there to listen. Nobody is there to listen, I must say. everybody wants to talk only about their lives. Nobody listens. This is our tragedy nowadays. So, because it was my, I had a motive behind, I listened and listened, and that's how this happened. This entire story came out.
Sir, I have a question that how do we overcome the challenges of getting bored or getting burnout when writing a book? There will be moments like we will be get burnout, we don't want to complete the book. So how do you overcome the challenges?
This is extremely difficult. The method I use is physical exercise. I do swimming every day for 40 minutes. Hi, Sadhna. I do swimming every day for 40 minutes. Physical exercise, definitely swimming. I work the whole day. I'm mentally and physically tired also. I go 40 minutes in the pool and I'm completely revived. I would suggest to all of you, please do physical exercise. Because your body, you're putting so much stress in your body. You have to think about your body. What is happening to people these days? They only live here. They're not aware of their body. You should be grateful. Your body is doing all the digestion. Your body is rejuvenating all the cells. Your body is fighting all the viruses. You have no idea. You should be aware of your body. When you do physical exercise, you begin to get aware. And your body is happy because your body is able to release stress. You must understand that because my brain is not feeling stress, that stress remains in the body. Physical exercise is a must. Go for a morning walk. Very important to see the sky, to know that you are a speck in the universe. You have to go to a place where you can see the sky. We sit inside a room and only see a ceiling, and then our ego begins to get too big. Go out to a park, look at the sky, be in touch with nature. So these are the things which used to rejuvenate me.